Human development in New Mexico inhibits movement of valued wildlife. Roads and fences carve up habitat, making it difficult or impossible for animals to reach areas important for their survival. Crossing animals are often struck by vehicles, also creating a human safety concern. To address these issues, New Mexico created a Wildlife Corridors Action Plan that identifies 11 priority locations for investing in wildlife corridors. Now, New Mexico can be a leader in building wildlife crossings and moving wildlife and people safely across the state.
So here on the Santa Ana Reservation, where I've grown up my entire life and was able to hunt it as a youth, and now very fortunate to have the opportunity to pass it on to my kids. Something that a lot of people don't have the fortune of having, and we have that here in the Santa Ana Pueblo to allow our traditions to continue. There was a point when I was younger where it was very rare to see a deer or an elk or even an antelope at all, and now they're everywhere. And it's thanks to the DNR's efforts, and we just can't thank them enough.
As the urban environment around the Pueblo of Santa Ana continues to grow and expand its footprint, and as the highways, I-25 and Highway 550, continue to see higher volumes of traffic, it was important to the Pueblo to understand, are there existing corridors on the Pueblo's land? Where are they, if they're there? And what can we do to try to help mitigate wildlife crossing these areas? You know, pronghorn and wild turkey we had to bring back here just because they couldn't get here. We had pronghorn from the West Mesa coming up onto our property at the 550 boundary in 2006, but they couldn't cross 550. We worked with Defenders of Wildlife to take all these GPS locations and run them through movement models. It's called Brownian Bridge movement models that use space and time between the locations to map where the animal was moving through time. Out of all the animals we have collared, none of them, except for wild turkeys, have crossed I-25. But I-25 has created basically a barrier for wildlife, and we know that wildlife do cross there because our wildlife collision data shows that they get hit and killed there. In February 2020, we collared a young male mountain lion, and after he was collared, he spent some time with his family still in his natal range, and then a few months later, he tried to move out of his range, and he was running up against I-25 on multiple occasions and would turn back, and eventually crossed Highway 550, and then moved west to the Mesa Verde National Park and the Ute Mountain Ute lands, where he's been since. It's possible that if I-25 had wildlife crossings along it, this mountain lion may have moved into the Sandias instead of going up to Mesa Verde. We'd never know that, but the point is that it tried to move across I-25 and never made it across, or never chose to cross because of the high traffic volumes.
Why is it important that the animals can get across the highways?
Well, that is a very good question. The reason why is because, unfortunately, with human population increasing and the development of more and more cities and roads, especially main highways, animals and the habitat of the wildlife is getting isolated. Is getting isolated. And just like humans, wildlife needs to migrate. They populate an area and then they migrate to other area. And here in the Chihuahuan Desert, areas like this, the natural resources fluctuates a lot. For example, the environment, it changes. One year you could have a lot of rain, precipitation, and all of the habitat will boom, which we will have great cover, food, water, and for them to survive. One year we could go into a drought, and those resources will be limited. Well, if you have 100 animals and those resources, they become limited from one year to the next, how are they gonna get all those resources? Well, they need to migrate to where those resources are. Well, these wildlife corridors creates that bridge to be able to connect those patches of wildlife, making it into a huge wildlife area.
So now that New Mexico has our wildlife corridors action plan in place, I think where the rubber meets the road now is actually implementing and funding an ambitious suite of projects so that we can address these issues of public safety and, wildlife stability and security. Like here on Highway 285, where I'm close to, there is a location that's identified for a infrastructure plan to be implemented. These plans are very expensive, and we had $2 million in this year's budget, in our legislative budget, for infrastructure projects. But these projects, each one is very expensive, and they can cost millions of dollars each. I think as citizens we have to ask ourselves, what is one human life worth? I myself was recently in a collision with an elk on Highway 68 south of Taos. I was in a small, low car. Had the elk come over the hood into the windshield, which often happens, I could have been killed. Obviously, the value of our wildlife from an economic standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint, a cultural standpoint is huge. So I think that where the rubber meets the road now is implementing the plan and ambitiously funding it. New Mexico is second to last in the West in implementing infrastructure projects. So let's get this done, and let's be the leader in the West in these projects, in protecting our citizens and making sure our wildlife have safe passage and habitat around these highways that is in good shape, so that they don't have to cross highways for water and other habitat-related issues.